I love that it's hard for you to stop talking. That's a good sign. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tina Roth-Eisenberg. I'm the founder of Creative Mornings and the New York City chapter host. Thank you. So happy to welcome you all in this stunning space today. And I want to say hi to the folks on the live stream that are tuning in and probably sitting in bed and being all cozy. Good for you. Please keep our live stream host, Brian, busy. Ask him some questions. And then who here, by raise of hands, is at a Creative Mornings for the first time? Woo, welcome. I want you to know how welcome you are. I will give you a hug afterwards if you want to, if you want that. It's totally cool if you don't. But for those of you who are first timers, you might not be aware that actually Creative Mornings is not just happening in New York City, but we're actually happening in 67 countries every month around the world. We have 1,000 volunteers who host their local creative communities in over 200 cities, and it's a real engine of generosity. And I'm just so proud of my team who helps me build and grow and expand what Creative Mornings is. And thank you. I want to thank our extremely generous venue host, Next Jump. It was a real pleasure watching you all walk in here and go, whoa. Funny enough, a week and a half ago, I got an email from the founder, Charlie. I was invited to a very cool event. Unfortunately, I couldn't go. But I was in full despair. I got 25 no's on venues. I was this close of saying to Pete, I think I have you, but I don't have seats. So I responded to Charlie saying, I'm so sorry, I can't make it to your event, but is there any chance you would host us? And Charlie came through instantly and said, I think we can. So a real big round of applause for Charlie. And I love when this happens, when you go from, I literally did not sleep for a week. I also had COVID that week, and I was like just stressing about venues, and I went from not having one to pretty much getting the most beautiful venue we could have dreamt of. So I feel like that's the universe sometimes saying, Tina, come on, just keep going. Anyway, thank you, Charlie and Megan. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kathy, who has been helping us set this up in record time. She was a delight. She's over there, Kathy. And also Tom, who helped us with AV. Next Jump is a truly remarkable company that I learned about in 2014 when Simon Sinek invited me to a screening at Next Jump for his TED Talk. And in this TED Talk, Simon mentions Charlie and Megan and what they're building at here at Next Jump. And it's a truly remarkable, supportive, thoughtful culture that they have built. They have been globally recognized by Harvard as an organization which places learning at the core of their corporate culture and strategy. And over the past 30 years, Next Jump has managed Perks at Work. It's the largest global employee e-commerce platform and has also pioneered programs that train the foundational skills of human judgment through their leadership development and decision-making training. Next Jump is no ordinary company. If you want to learn more, I would say Google Charlie Kim Next Jump, and you will find lots of talks where he talks about his philosophy. And I am really, really grateful we're here today. Thank you. So for the regulars amongst you, you know that at every event we read the manifesto, which is, reminds us of why we do what we do. And we always pick someone that signs up from the audience to read it. And I always love going through the attendee list and it's like, who should it be? And then oh my God, we have Ari Takata Vasquez from the Oakland chapter here. She's not only an organizer / host at the Oakland chapter, she also spoke at Creative Mornings. So she's gonna read the manifesto for us.
Awesome, thanks y'all for having me here. It was beautiful serendipity. Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate with you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections, in learning from others, in hugs and high fives. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome.
Thank you. All right, who here was brave enough to put their name in the 30-second pitch wheel? I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. In case you don't know what it is, at every event, we allow 4 people from the audience to pitch anything for 30 seconds. Poetry, love, looking to be hired, hiring, whatever it is. We do have a case of somebody who found love, so I am advocating for being brave on that one. Casey, where are we? Who are our 30-second pitchers today?
The lucky winners of getting up in front of a bunch of people are Lakshmi. Can you raise your hand and confirm you're here? Hi. So just come line up here after the event, okay? Next is, will you open that for me, Tina? Thank you so much. Ricardo Malhotra. I know Ricardo. Next, thank you, Tina. We have Lee Raymond. Lee, can you confirm you're here? Hi, Lee. Woohoo! I know. What's going on? Dun, dun, dun. Last but not least, Michelle Marshall. Michelle? Okay, why are you all over there? Suspicious.
It was not rigged. It was not. Last time it was. Oh, sorry. No, not yet. Afterwards. Okay. Afterwards. Anyway. By show of hands, who here has made a new friend or talked to someone during breakfast that you didn't know? I'm so proud of you. Oh, wait. Okay. I was not expecting that response. Because I'm just going to make you talk to each other for 2 minutes because I was expecting you saying, oh, I'm a little shy. Anyway, please say hi to each other.
We got all 4 cameras, baby.
If you wouldn't mind, you're ready. You did it. You always do it.
I think you're going to stand.
Oh, sorry. Dang, I'm right in there. Come on back, everybody. Come on back, everybody. Exa, ring that cowbell. Ring that cowbell. Oh, I think you did it. Oh, you want me to do it? Okay. I swear one day I'll do this and we leave. Because it's actually all I want you to do is just to meet each other. Actually, yes, 2 months ago, I played the stand-up if game. And for the first time ever, in over 15 years, I asked you, stand up if you've ever made a friend at Creative Mornings. And for those of you who have been here the last month, like, I cannot stop talking about this because this is what I saw. Out of 250 people, 240 were standing. And it was a real testament to what my team and I have been able to build. And my heart nearly exploded. I literally cannot stop looking at this photo because it's a reminder of what I do, why I do what I do. When I moved here in 1999 and I didn't know a soul, I was like, where are my people? Where can I make friends? And now I have created an engine for all of us to make friends. And this is why Creative Mornings exists. And we're working on something new that I think will turn this into overdrive. And we're calling it Creative Mornings Clubs. It's community-led, hyper-local, intimate gatherings around something you love. It could be a walking club, a silent book reading club, a painting club. The options are completely endless and can be whatever you want it to be. These will be entirely run by you, our community, and you get to invite all of us. The beauty of these clubs is going to be that they're recurring, that you're committing to a certain cadence every other Wednesday. So that they're not one-off events and you can actually really start forming deep friendship. We did this with the choir in 2019. We kind of prototyped this not knowing what we're doing, but we met every other Wednesday for the choir rehearsals. And what I realized is like people like you that I see once a month, all of a sudden I got to see them every other Wednesday. And if somebody was missing, we missed them. And like the friendships just deepen and it makes me really happy. And that's what we're after here. And we're after a heartbeat, we're after deep friendships, commitment to a small group of humans, like for example, this mending circle that happened 2 weeks ago. And the idea for clubs came to me a few months ago after about a year of me always saying to my team and people in my life, I feel like I'm gestating something, I just don't know what it is. And I jolted out of bed one morning and I was like, this is it. And interestingly enough, a week later, I'm a big fan of synchronicities because I feel like it's the universe telling me like to keep going. A week later, my dear friend Casper, who is where is he sitting? Over there in the purple shirt, who's an incredible community builder. He invited me to a salon where Pete was speaking. And I was blown away because Pete created a documentary about clubs and why they're important. So I think you all are ready for this because you keep telling us what you want is to be able to meet up in between the events. And I don't believe a community is a community until it self-organizes, and we're gonna allow you to self-organize. So we have a big vision around it, but we're starting really small. And we're running a clubs pilot in New York City first. And we wanna see if you're excited about this, because I am, but it doesn't mean you are. I hope you are. And then we're going to figure out how to scale this to the global community. So this is a premiere. I've never talked about this. We're going to introduce 3 clubs to start this out. There's a mending circle. There's a write shop. I'm one of the co-hosts. And there's going to be a drawing club. So you're the first ones to hear about this and the first ones who are able to sign up. They're really tiny. So if you're interested, look in the follow-up email. They're going to be linked in there. They're not linked on the website. You won't find them there yet. So hurry up and sign up. But also only sign up if you're committed to showing up. This is like a dinner party. If you're not there, it's felt, okay? And then we're also going to send out a survey in the follow-up email where you can tell us what do you think about this idea and if you have ideas and if you want to start a club. And candid feedback is welcome, so please don't hold back. We did it, guys. Look. Christina and Exa are like the masterminds of clubs. Woo. Okay. So what did you think of having coffee up there on that terrace? Right? So thanks to local partners and venue hosts like Charlie and Megan, we are able to make these events happen and keep them free. And I want to thank the 2 longstanding and super generous local partners. One of them is Harvest. They're just like us, a New York City-based company, and they have supported us for years and years and years on end, like even when we were just one chapter, just here in New York. And they made something quite boring, actually really easy and enjoyable. It's time tracking and expenses tracking. So if you're someone who has to do those things, check out Harvest. They also share really interesting articles on their website about just being optimizing your work and like how you do your work. So highly recommend you check out Harvest, and thank you, Harvest, so much. And then I want to thank MPB. They're also a longstanding partner of us. Who here has photo, video gear at home that you're not using, that's just sitting there? Me too. They make it super easy and worth it to give your unwanted gear a new life. MPB's purpose is to open up the world of visual storytelling in a way that's good for people and the planet. So MPB recirculates, this is bonkers, more than 500,000 items like cameras and lenses, more than 500,000 items a year. It's super impressive, so thank you, MPB. We love our partners. All right, I am so excited to introduce Pete. He's a writer and civic advocate and agreed to travel here from DC. He got in really late last night, so be really gentle with him. Pete works on civic projects that deepen American democracy and solidarity. He's the author of Dedicated, the Case for Commitment in an Age of Infinite Browsing. And he's the co-director of Join or Die, the documentary on community in America. It's a film about why you should join a club and why the fate of America depends on it. Do you see what we're doing here? This is so strategically aligned. With Pete's help, we actually organized a virtual screening of Join or Die, which is the only way how you can see this documentary right now. I believe it comes out in the fall on Netflix. He's nodding. In the follow-up email, you see the links. There are 100 free tickets if you want to grab as long as they're there, or if you want to support Pete, there's also the option to pay for a $12 ticket. Please note you have until Saturday, April 27th, that's tomorrow, till 6 o'clock to grab your ticket and start watching, and then you have 48 hours. It's like this, it's a whole new world, virtual screenings, guys. So look for the instructions in the follow-up email if you want to see it. Pete is also the co-founder of Democracy Policy Network, a state policy organization focused on raising up ideas that deepen democracy. And it just keeps going with this guy. He is also the co-founder of Getaway, which I love so much, by the way, a company that provides simple, unplugged escapes to tiny cabins outside of major cities. Who has been to a Getaway? A few of you. And if all of that wasn't just impressively enough, his Harvard Law School graduation speech, A Counterculture of Commitment, has been viewed more than 30 million times. What an absolute honor to have you here, Pete. And give a rock star of applause, please.
Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. It's such a joy. Good morning. This is the earliest I've ever talked. Not just a formal talk, just like talked at all. Actually, that's a lie. It's not very early for me. I have a 2-year-old. He wakes me up every morning at 5 a.m. demanding Elmo. And so it's actually really late for me. So, but for some of you, I assume some of you don't have a 2-year-old that wakes you up at 5 a.m. demanding Elmo. So I'm very grateful you came out for you. And I want to do my part to make this worth your while. So I've spent the last 20 years obsessing over the question of what's wrong with American public life. Why is everyone so lonely? Why is everyone so isolated? Why have so many people dropped out of American public life? Why is our politics so dysfunctional? Why do people not trust our institutions? And, honestly, why are so many of our institutions not worthy of our trust? And, summarizing it, why are we so hopeless? And why have so many of our attempts at turning around these big problems of our time, the latest technology or the latest politician or the latest social trend, have turned out to not be the silver bullets that we thought they would be? And in 20 years of obsessing over these questions, I've gleaned about 2 ideas, only 2. I'm averaging about 1 a decade. And, if I had 30 minutes to talk to you, the last 10 minutes would be blank. But I only have 20 minutes, so I thought, that's a good amount of time to share those 2 insights. And the adventure, mostly, of how I happened upon them. And those 2 insights kind of got baked into these 2 projects. One is that book, Dedicated, The Case for Commitment in an Age of Infinite Browsing. And the other, is kind of a big part of the message of this documentary, Join or Die, that I co-directed with my sister, Rebecca Davis. But let's start with that kind of first idea that became that book, Dedicated. The journey began about a decade ago when I noticed something really strange. Throughout my 20s, whenever I or any of my friends or anyone I talked to was asking elders, adults, I'm 34 and I still call them adults sometimes, what do I do with my life? What should we do with our lives? What advice do you have? And, specifically, what should we do with our lives when there's all these big problems in our time? How do we have an impact? What should we do about it? We kept all getting this repeated same response, which was, it's kind of this kind of like totemic phrase. We kept hearing from people, well, I don't know, but you should keep your options open. That was the phrase, keep your options open. It kept being repeated everywhere. It was like a creed, keep your options open. In a way, it's kind of like a punt on the answer of what you should do. I don't really know what you should do, but you should keep your options open when in doubt. I know that you like that high school sweetheart, but you should keep your options open. I know you're really excited about this cause, but don't say too much about it. It might close down some options. I know you like this place, but don't dig in too much. You want to keep your options open. You never know where you'll be later. And, I noticed so many of us started internalizing that, and we started giving each other that advice, keep your options open. And, I was wondering how widespread this was. I thought, is this just a privileged thing for people who have a lot of options? But, everyone from all backgrounds of life, even if they didn't have options in one realm of life, they had options, they were keeping their options open in other realms of life that they had a lot of options for. And that was really strange to me, that was kind of like, oh, wow, okay, that's like a creed of our time. And then I happened upon this Polish philosopher, Zygmunt Bauman. And he had this idea called liquid modernity. And I was like, oh man, this is the philosopher of keeping your options open. Liquid modernity, Zygmunt Bauman's idea was the idea that, none of us want to commit to any place or person or institution or community. We want to remain like liquid so that we can adapt to fit any future shape that we must fit later in time. We never know whether it's going to be a round hole or a square hole or whatever. So I shouldn't be a specific type of shape because I should remain liquid so I can fit into any future shape. And where he added to it, he said also in turn, the institutions and communities and organizations themselves were remaining like liquid, and they were giving up their loyalties to us. You never know if I don't need these employees anymore. You never know if I don't need these members anymore. You never know if it doesn't really matter that you're citizens of this state anymore. So we have to remain like liquid so we as an org can adapt to fit any future shape, and that's what we live in, liquid modernity. And then I was like, okay, I got this like creed and I got this kind of highfalutin concept of liquid modernity, but then it really hit me emotionally of what was going on in our time when I was, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience, I was browsing Netflix one night, looking for something to watch. I'm sitting on the couch, I scroll through different titles, I read a few reviews. I was like, oh, let me check out the trailer of that. Let me check out another trailer. What's its Rotten Tomatoes score? What did Roger Ebert, Roger Ebert was dead by the time the movie came out. Roger Ebert is not here to guide me. Oh, let me start it. I'm not liking these opening scenes. Let me click back. And then I fall asleep and don't watch any given movie. And I go, oh man, that feels awful. This feels like hell. I'm stuck in infinite browsing mode. And that's what was, I have one more metaphor if none of these metaphors have hit. Some people are like, give me another metaphor. We need a fourth. It's like we're escaped the locked room of our childhood and we're so happy we get to browse all the rooms in the hallway of life, but then we pop into every room, but then we're like, I don't know if I want to settle into any of these rooms, so I might as well sleep in the hallway. So infinite browsing mode, keeping our options open, liquid modernity, living in the hallway. I felt like this is what was happening in our time. And so that was kind of a hint of this question of like what's going on with American public life. But there's a lot of question marks in between that being a phenomenon and what's going on in American public life. And then it'd be, well, so what? Who cares that we're stuck in infinite browsing mode? Well, none of us are happy in infinite browsing mode. None of us are happy in keeping our options open. Keeping our options open seems like a Ponzi scheme because you wake up 5 years later, you're the self that you were keeping your options open for. And you're not that happy that your options have been kept open, and the only skill you've built is keeping your options open. And you look, and you say, what should I do now? And you're like, well, I guess I'm really good at keeping my options open. Let me keep my options open for the next 5 years. And you're not solving any of the great problems of our time. You're not having an impact. You're not rebuilding community. You're not rejuvenating institutions. You're not providing hope. And so this isn't the way forward. The advice we've been given by all the adults is totally wrong. All we have, I found this New Yorker article, New Yorker cartoon that captured this really well, which was, it was a grave stone, and it said on the gravestone, he kept his options open. And so, and then this other strange thing happened. Another river joined this river of thought, which was, I looked at who were all the people that were happy and were having an impact. It turned out they were the people who completely ignored this advice of keeping your options open. They were people who made a commitment to a particular thing. They were people who committed to being members of a community. There were people who were local patriots, committed to being members of a place, a neighborhood. There were people who were stewards. They were committing to a specific institution or community. They were artisans. They were people committed to a craft, not just honing the craft, but being part of the craft community. They were companions. They were people who were committed to relationships, the basic form of commitment. They were showing their love for those things, particular things, by working at them for a long time, by taking that brave act of closing doors and clicking out of infinite browsing mode, foregoing options for the sake of their love. And I started calling these people long-haul heroes. Often when we think about heroism, Hollywood heroism, it's usually one big brave moment, There's some horrible guy at the Starbucks and you tell him what you said was wrong or something, storming up the hill, waving your sword, giving the perfect speech at the perfect time. That's how we think of heroism. But what all these kind of long-haul heroes were they were the heroes of the day-to-day. They showed their heroism by working day in, day out, year in, year out, 5, 10, 15, 20 years at something. And their heroism looked a lot less like sword waving and a lot more like gardening. It was like the trowel instead of the sword. And this really burrowed deep into my heart. I really believe these people were doing something holy. When you were committed to something for a long time, when you really burrowed in. The word dedicate, it has two meanings. One, it means to make something holy, like we dedicated the church or we dedicated the chapel. And it also means to work at something for a long time. She was really dedicated to the project. And I don't think that was a coincidence. You do something holy when you work at something for a long time. Infinite browsing felt like hell. The way these people talked about getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and being part of the Raleigh-Durham Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, or moving to some town and getting really involved in the neighborhood, or Tina starting CreativeMornings. It felt like heaven. They were touching something special. We can't control the length of our days, but they felt like they were controlling the depth of their days. And that felt really special. And so I kind of, took all these ideas and I turned it into a graduation speech and I gave it, and nothing much happened for a year. And then in a weird twist of late stage capitalism, this weird media entity called Goalcast cut my speech in half, stripped out all the particular content to it, made it very abstract. They added what could only be described as a rise and grind beat underneath it. And then they added kind of very generic stock footage over it. And that video was seen by 30 million people. So I guess I was so mad when it was made. I was like, this is awful. And then it turned out to be the thing that let me explore the concept of commitment for another 5 years writing a book. And I got most of the joy of writing it was that I got to explore this idea more. And, just a few things in exploring commitment. It's a really kind of verdant forest to explore, You could start noticing that so many things in American history, or history anywhere, usually has the story of long-haul heroism behind it. So, I think about Rosa Parks. She's often told as a Hollywood hero, like a dragon slaying hero. She had this one big moment where she sat on the bus, and the Montgomery bus boycott happened, and we had the wave of the civil rights movement, and the rest is history. But it turns out, if you read Martin Luther King's memoir, Stride Toward Freedom, about the Montgomery bus boycott, the first chapter of it is incredibly boring and tedious because what he says in the first chapter of the story of the Montgomery bus boycott was that all he does is just name check all of the civic ecosystem that had been built up in Montgomery. So the building that they ran the bus boycott after was the Bricklayers Union that had built up in Montgomery and had enough money to form a building that was the Bricklayers Union building that they could work out of. He himself, Martin Luther King, he talks about, I'm part of all these phone trees, I'm part of all these newsletter committees, I'm doing weddings, I'm doing funerals, I'm building all this trust. There's all these committees in my church. I'm part of committees of all the reverends in Montgomery. There's also a human rights council. There's also a women's council. And Rosa Parks herself, she was the secretary, as the official group secretary of the local NAACP for 10 years before she did that. And so the story of this wildfire is actually the story of long haul laying of tinder. In writing the book, I interviewed Evan Wolfson, who's the main lawyer behind the gay marriage decision. 30 years of walking from a law school paper on a crazy idea called gay marriage to 10 years of convincing the gay rights movement to even give him a corner of the movement funding and energy and space to even start working on the marriage project. Then 10 years of getting that first, state of Hawaii and then Massachusetts. And then 10 years of fighting state by state battles. And then eventually when the Obergefell decision came down 30 years after he had written the original paper, he said he finally was able to cry. That's a story of long haul heroism. We only see the ending. And I also got to explore kind of the fears that come with commitment. Why are we not committing if we're living in the age of keep your options open? What's standing in the way? And I kind of discovered there are these three fears. There's the fear of regret. I'm going to commit to something, but then 20 years from now, I'm going to regret choosing this instead of that. There's the fear of missing out. Because I commit to something, I can't be everywhere with everyone doing everything. And then there's a real millennial one, which is the fear of association, which is in committing to something, it's going to threaten my identity and my sense of self because I'm going to have to take in all the messiness of the larger thing that I'm committing to. I'm going to have to stand by the organization that I'm committing to. I'm going to stand by the person that I'm in a relationship with. I'm going to be accountable to them. I'm going to, be of a place, and people have all these thoughts about what that place means, and I'm going to have to kind of be part of that. And I think those three fears were standing in the way. And then I tried to, I talked to a bunch of long haul heroes, and I'm like, how do you overcome these fears? And it turns out there are really interesting ways to overcome these fears. So, different mindset shifts. So, and there's a gift at the other end of each of these fears. So, fear of regret, you're scared that you 20 years from now will regret what you chose among the choices. But it turns out when you make a commitment, that changes who you are and changes the person that eventually has the capability of looking back and wondering whether you should have made that decision. So you actually are converted into being the person who made that commitment, and it rewires the constellation of meaning in your life by the act of making the commitment. And then it becomes very hard to regret the choice you made because so much of you becomes part of the thing that you made. You move to Texas and you become a Texan. You meet a bunch of people in Texas. You learn about the history of Texas. You start wearing a cowboy hat or whatever it is. And then you look back 20 years ago and the material in which you look back on your life is Texan. So it's some people still regret things, but it's much less likely than you think you will. Okay, then the fear of missing out. What's the mind shift there? Well, we're scared of, by committing to going to the mending circle every Thursday, what if something cool comes up on a Thursday and I committed to going to the mending circle? So yes, you're going to miss out on some things if you commit to something. But if this is the mindset shift a bunch of these people had, they said, well, if I don't commit to things, I'm also going to miss out on a bunch of things. So it's a wash. And in fact, many of the novel things that are the most exciting, most cool, the equivalent of skydiving, are actually the feelings you have at the end of a long commitment. Whatever razzle-dazzle thing you're missing is nothing compared to the feeling of taking an idea from a Google Doc to a building. It's nothing compared to having a bunch of friends that you've been through have a bunch of war stories with. It's nothing compared to, watching the neighborhood garden that you wanted to start in your neighborhood come to fruition. Those are the novelties you're missing out on if you never commit. And then finally, this fear of association. This is really interesting. You know, so many people felt like, okay, I have a rigid, static, almost platonic self. And anytime I attach to a cause or a craft or a community or a place or a person, I have to assess, does that thing out there fit with the magic me that's out, that's like, I have to find. And I'm always wondering, is this me? Is this me? Is this me? Is this me? And if maybe it's not me, maybe part of it isn't me. Maybe I think this part's part of me, but that part's not part of me. But what so many of these long haul heroes told me is they said, that's not the way I think about myself. You know, there's this Bob Dylan line. He says, he was asked by an interviewer, he said, did you leave Minnesota to go find yourself? And he goes, nobody finds themselves, they make themselves. And the material in which we make ourselves are our commitments and relationships. So there is no, you know, there's some authenticity out there. There's some senses you have in your soul if something fits you, but it's not rigid and full and complete. What makes it feel more complete? It's not like fitting Tetris pieces together. It's like growing a garden of who you are. It's the commitments themselves. And so they said, I no longer fear the fear of association. Because that is the stuff that makes me who I am. And you know, all of this is hard. It's hard to convert into a commitment. It's hard to give up immediate novelties for the great novelties there. It's hard to, you know, deal with the awkwardness of all the people you have to deal with when committing to something. But on the other side are prizes. You know, when you overcome the fear of regret, you have a real sense of purpose. When you overcome the fear of missing out, you have the novelty of depth, like the real deep joys of depth. And then when you overcome the fear of association, when you go through the desert of community building where it's awkward on the first day and you say, how's the weather? Do you have any siblings? You know, you come out the other end and you have community and friends where it's not awkward anymore. And along the way, you had the balm of mercy, you know, willingness to enter into the chaos of others, willingness to come up with solutions to the awkward contradictions of your group. Come through and you end up with a lot of friends. And so at the other end of commitments and the other end of these fears are, you know, purpose and depth and community and joy and impact. And that's, you know, what I was trying to do. I wanted people to make that jump. You know, there's no blueprint for solving the great big problems of our time. We just need, you know, my theory is basically we just need a lot of people working on it. We need a lot of people falling in love with different corners of the world and loving them into being better. And, you know, Wendell Berry, the great Kentucky philosopher, anyone know Wendell Berry, the great farmer philosopher? He has this wonderful phrase. He says, we live in an age where so many things have fallen apart. And all we can do is we can take one thing that should be with another thing and put it together. And then he has this great phrase. Two things, not all things. Two things, not all things. And, you know, that's what I started thinking about commitment. You know, we can't solve all the problems in the world, but if we feel we are to be connected with something and put a little things together, like Tina put all you together this morning and the whole team, that's what we could do. Two things, not all things. And it adds up. If all of us are doing two things, not all things, it quickly becomes all things. But then I ran into this problem, which was that, you know, I kept going on podcasts talking about commitment, and I kept getting asked this question. So that was my first insight, commitment's important. But I ran into this problem. Not that profound, but, you know, it's taken my life. I kept going on podcasts. I kept getting asked this question. Oh, Pete, we got Pete on here. He's the commitment guy. We're going to talk about commitment to our health regimen or commitment to working out. I'm like, look at me. I am not knowledgeable about commitment to a health regimen or commitment to working out. And, you know, other ones were like, you know, I saw your speech, Pete, and I decided this year I'm committed to me or something, or I'm committed to naps or something. And I go, no, that's not what I'm talking about at all. Like, that might be a nice thing. That might be someone else, but I'm not talking about that. So I was like, oh gosh, I didn't hit it. It's not commitment. That's not the exact thing. And people said, oh, this is a guy who wants no one to quit things. And I go, oh, no, I'm not against quitting. I'm against browsing infinitely. It's okay to quit. The knowledge that you can quit is what lowers the stakes, that allows you to make a commitment and let the natural forces of commitment take over and make you not want to quit. And so I was like, okay, something's missing here. And there was also this thing missing, which is, I said, like, commitment's good. People make commitments and it seems like good things happen, but what's the mystery box right here? Big question mark. And so I said, okay, something's missing here. And then I ran into the story of Wendell Berry's bucket, and it kind of answered the question. So Wendell Berry has this parable of the bucket. He says there's this old bucket on his farm, his grandpa's farm. It's always kind of like these pastoral stories from Wendell Berry. On my grandpa's farm, there's an old bucket. And the bucket was behind the barn, and it was on a rusty nail, and everyone forgot about it. And he checked out the bucket, and he noticed that over time, that bucket had gathered feathers, and some mice crawled into the bucket, and leaves fell in the bucket, and rain fell in the bucket, and little bugs climbed through the bucket, and a bird made its nest in the bucket, but then the bird left, and the eggs looked in the bucket. And by the time he looked into the bucket 10 years after the bucket was there and undisturbed, he noticed it was the most rich soil ever inside of the bucket. What that bucket had done is it had created culture. It had been cultivated. And why was it able to be cultivated? Because that bucket had stayed there and had been steady and solid and committed to being on that nail and holding all those things. And what Wendell Berry is talking about in that parable is that when we commit to a community of people and it's relatively stable, it's not feathers and eggs and bugs, it's inside jokes and little songs that you make, and ways you start dressing, and ways you solve problems, and memories of a big fight you had and healed, and memories of a big challenge you all faced and solved and overcame, and little rules of thumb, and all of that. And out of that, out of a committed community, comes culture. What commitment enables is it enables cultivation. That is the magic sauce in why does commitment lead to good things. Cultivation is not just music and food. Culture is not just music and food. Culture is the accrual of all of the experiential knowledge of the life of the community imprinted on the life of the community. And that's what's going on out there. But what's going on in here in each of all the members of the cultivation process is it's not only that that cultivation is growing and you can go to a place that's really well cultivated and see this is awesome. It's also cultivating inside of each of them to make them feel part of this thing, make them weave their own stories into the story of this thing. And, that was very revealing for me because it kind of solved, this question of why does it seem like no big idea that it comes along to solve, like silver bullet that comes along to solve public problems ever works? Because, you check in on a TED Talk 10 years later, and it turns out that the big idea that they talked about that was going to save everything, microfinance or something, it turns out 10 years later, you find out it's not that it was a sham. It's just that, well, it worked in one place. It didn't work in another place. Well, it only works if everyone has buy-in. Oh, well, it only works if it's part of an ecosystem of other ideas that all work together. And there are some places that don't have it, and they seem to have solved the problems. And there's some places that do have it and don't seem to have solved the problems. And so it turns out like big ideas and silver bullets don't solve things. And then it makes you wonder, well, why do some things still work? Why are there some schools that have turned around? Why are there some places that have turned around? Why are there some communities that have worked? Well, they're well cultivated. There were people who were committed, and they allowed that magic process of the accrual of experiential knowledge in a stable bucket to grow, and it's awesome. And the places that aren't working, it's usually because they're not well cultivated. Usually maybe the people weren't committed, maybe they just wanted it to happen quickly, maybe they let a culture die because no one was stewarding it, or they were holding to it too rigidly, and so people didn't feel an ownedness over it. And so that kind of became the second big idea, which is the reason we like commitment is commitment leads to cultivation, and cultivation leads to the happiness and the impact and the joy. And so kind of to close out, that led to this kind of movie, Join or Die, partially, that I've made with my sister, Rebecca Davis, which is, okay, if you really care about the magic of cultivation, what is the thing that leads to those commitments and that cultivation? And what we found, I'll give away you've already heard the ending, but I'll give away how we got there. Turns out there's this, what we put forth is that it's clubs. It's associational life. turns out there's this guy, Robert Putnam, who wrote this book, Bowling Alone, and we tell the story of Bowling Alone, which is about the decline of community in America and club life in America over the last 50 years. We talk about that in the movie, but it turns out there's a prequel to Bowling Alone, which was his own long-haul journey. So this political scientist, Robert Putnam, he goes to Italy, and for 20 years, he studies why some regional governments in Italy work well, and some regional governments in Italy don't work well. Kind of like one of these questions I'm obsessed with, what makes kind of public life work? And he runs all the variables. Is it the economy? Is it education? Is it the presence of religion? Is it the stability of the staff? Is it, how many political parties there are? Is it the design of the Constitution? And what he finds is the only thing that correlates with government success in a really strong way is the amount of bocce clubs and the amount of choral societies and the amount of local newspaper readerships. And qualitatively, he's like, well, the place where the government's working, they have these grand plazas where everyone's like sipping coffee and talking to each other and dancing in the street. And he goes, has a 91% correlation. And he's like, and he told me, social scientists never get a 91% correlation. And correlation does not equal causation, so he needs to find a causal mechanism. And what he rediscovers is this idea he calls social capital, which is the spirit of kind of the amount of social networks, the density of the social networks of the place, the amount of associational life, the amount of people that trust their neighbors, the amount of people that are having dinner parties, things like this. And how I interpret that is that what he's talking about with social capital is the relationships themselves and the associations that are the vessel for those relationships are the vessel for the cultivation. They are the buckets. When you have a relationship and you have a committed relationship over the long haul, culture is created, people are weaved together, they're weaved together into their institutions, and experiential knowledge is accrued, and good things happen, and people feel happy. And so it's kind of like we just had Passover, and there's this thing called Had Gadya, where they're like, the cat ate the mouse and the dog ate the cat, and it gets violent, like the person killed the dog or something. But does anyone know Had Gadya? What? The cat eats the goat. I'm half Jewish, so I'm not as good at the songs, and it's kind of like that. It's like, what creates the cultivation? Well, it's the commitments, and what creates the commitments? Well, they're commitments to relationships, and what creates the relationships? Well, it's associational. If you want to create relationships at a large scale, it's associational life. It's the clubs. And Bob came back to America, found out we're having a giant decline in clubs. There's also a giant decline in commitment. There's a giant decline in cultivation and culture. And so the message of the movie is, we need to become a nation of joiners again. And we need to do what needs to be done to create the conditions to facilitate that joining. So I'll end here. What this all comes down to is we got to be brave, and we got to make that jump to make a commitment and start that cultivation process and join one of these clubs. This whole thing was just propaganda for joining Creative Mornings clubs, which I wanted for Tina. And so I'll end with this very short Wendell Berry poem about hope in making that choice. It's called February 2nd, 1968. It's very resonant to what's going on today. Here it is. In the dark of the moon, in flying snow, in the dead of winter, war spreading, families dying, the world in danger, I walk the rocky hillside sowing clover. I walk the rocky hillside sowing clover. We feel like there's a rocky hillside out there, and what we got to do is sow some clover, and who knows what it'll be like in 40, 50 years. Thanks, everyone.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry for going long. Oh, my God.
Oh, okay. Are we doing questions? Or thoughts, or disagreements, or what you hated?
Raise your hand if you have a question. We'll come to you.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm just curious what clubs you belong to.
Okay. I'm part of, I'm part of a housing advocacy org in my hometown of Falls Church, Virginia. I moved back to my hometown right outside DC, and we're trying to get more affordable housing in our town, so kind of an activist club. And then I'm part of a book club. And one of the fun things is we learned about the whole history of book clubs in making the movie, and it's an incredible history. Every club that you think is just totally normal has an incredible history. Which is, book clubs actually started as a feminist idea. There's all these amazing articles, if you want to look it up online, where women were shut out of colleges and universities, and what they started doing is, we want to learn too, and they started learning together. If the institutions are going to shut us out, let's start book clubs together. And during the women's club movement, which is like historians of civic life, is this particular period at the turn of the last century, there were a lot of book clubs, and out of that became the idea of a book club, which is now a big thing. So sorry that you were asking about me, but I always have, I like all the little histories of all the clubs.
How much of liquid modernity do you believe is innate to humanity versus more so like a recent thing?
You know, part of me thinks that we weren't always liquid modern. So, there were times when we had, more commitments. It actually shows up in Putnam's data, the amount of time people spent in associational life, or the amount of time people spend in one stable place, or the amount of time people spend in one, job or occupation. That was longer in the past than it is today. So it's not like baked into our DNA to be liquid modern. Is it baked into our technological world? Maybe it is. I always think about these large social trends as, it's like ecosystem collapse, where, you have a rainforest and suddenly it's an arid desert. Is it because there was an excess of wolves one year? Is it because this fungus took over the trees? Is it because when the trees came, the birds left and then the worms overgrew and the river started moving in a different direction? Who knows what the specific thing was, but something unraveled. And something unraveled about kind of solid modernity and became liquid modernity. Probably capitalism has something to do with it, money, some different cultural changes, different, the realities of technologies like movies and radio and the internet and cars and airplanes, being able to see all these different things you could have as options. But I don't like deterministic ideas because there's always an alternative. It could have gone a different way, and it can still go a different way today.
We have one more question, and we have to close out afterwards. I'm
Hi,
sorry.
Pete. Thanks
Hello.
so much. So I'm a membership owner, so I run clubs for a living.
Oh, great. Okay.
And I just wanted to ask you, what, in your opinion, makes people stay in a membership?
Yeah, there's this great, I was looking up the history of the word authenticity. And it comes from like this, I forgot what country, this is so wrong, microaggression against Europeans, but sorry, rare microaggression against Europeans, which I don't remember which European country, but it came from this idea of ownedness, which was the translation of the word, which was, ownedness is when we feel authentic, we feel an ownership over what we're doing. We feel like we're part of it, we have a say in it, things like that. And I'm just kind of a big fan of democracy and membership. And so one of the things is, if clubs make you feel like you have ownership over the club, as opposed to just enacting a script of the leadership of the club and you're just pawns for their thing, that leads people to stay more. That's when the roots grip people. And so I always tell people, what's amazing about like the Mormons is when you first join the Mormons, you'd think they would be like, you're the new member, you don't have to do anything. But it's actually the opposite. They're like, you're the new member, can you help us mow the lawn at the church next week? And what that does, that grips you, is it makes you start the process of feeling a sense of ownedness over the thing. Obviously in all religions, there's other aspects where there's really not a lot of ownedness, but I think that's a big part of club membership. And I have to do a plug for my sister's sake, my older sister, who is always pushing me to do the plugs for the film, which is, and I have younger brother obligations, which is, if you want to host a community screening of the film, go to joinordie.film. We're having the Join Up 2024 tour of Join or Die, and the biggest conferences to the smallest book clubs, we want to show community screenings. We want you watching this movie together, joinordie.film. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, everyone, for sitting. Can't wait to talk to you later. Thank you.
Isn't this eerie how perfect this all fell into place? I swear I didn't plan it. Now, 30-second pictures. Come up front, quick, because we are actually running a little late. I'm so sorry, Kathy. Watch out for the cables, please. Nobody trip. Okay. Come over here.
Hi. Good morning. I'm more a savor my hot chocolate person versus espresso shot, but here goes. I'm here to talk about life crafting. Life crafting is a project that explores what it means to live more fulfilling lives. There are 3 pillars to it. The first one is called Mosaic, which is really inviting people to, through a rotating set of prompts, which inspire people to look inwards. Expression can be spoken word, written word, artistic expression, etc. My hope for this project is to inspire more people to look inwards because that's the only way forward. The second pillar is called Fika. Fika is very similar to clubs. It's curated, themed experiences, which we plan to run across the cities, IRL as well as virtual, exploring one theme, and we want to see what a cross-pollinated set of stories look like for that theme. We completed the first ever experience called Failabrations in a couple of cities, and it explores what it means to reframe our own relationships with failures, and we are so excited about it. And these are themed experiences which offer serendipitous reflection, meaningful connection, as well as deep play. The third one is essentially Lab, which essentially looks at small experiments which help to bridge the value action gap. We know a lot of things, we don't necessarily act on it, so how do we do that is really what it is. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ricardo Malhotra, and what Pete said really hit home with me. So I am, after 10 years of being in a corporate job, doing photography and retouching, I am closing that door, and I am, sorry, I shake a lot. I'm going to be focusing on my 2 things, and my 2 things are illustration and fashion. I want to build a business based around the art that I create, and I like to create a very micro brand for masculine leaning people, where I create my art and fashion together. So it's going to be like one-of-a-kind pieces to like 1 of 10. What I'm looking for is advice, guidance, friendship and community, and any work, if anybody has any. If anybody's built their own business or can offer me some guidance and show me how they've done what I'm looking to do, that would be amazing. I'm making a commitment to my art, which is, yeah, long time in the coming. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Lee Raymond. I'm a single gay man living in New York City, and I'm pitching myself for love, everyone. Oh boy, I am a performer and photographer. I love cooking and traveling, and I am looking for someone to share in the beauty and the wonder of this world with. Also, like a little bit of Muppet energy is always appreciated. So you're gonna go ahead and stalk my Insta because I know you're gonna do it anyways because there's a lot of millennials in this room. Look at how much I'm shaking. It's okay. But message me, tell me about yourself, and let's chat. Thank you.
Wow, how do I follow that? I'm Michelle Marshall. I'm a second career interior designer with a nonprofit background. While actively looking for ways to practice design for the common good, I came across Humble Design, which combats systemic homelessness by furnishing homes for families and individuals leaving shelters. It would take Humble clients 18 years to save up for the items that Humble puts in their home in just a few hours. And 99% of their clients don't return to homelessness. Nothing like this exists in New York City, so I'm seeking funding, a warehouse, and people to share this with their networks. Please come see me afterwards if you're interested in helping out.
I want to congratulate you all. It takes a lot of guts to do what you did. And please let us know if you found love. Thank you. A few more thank yous before we let you all go home. I actually want to give the mic to Megan for a second, the co-CEO of Next Jump, because she actually just generously offered spontaneously that if you want to get a tour of this 3-floor office, you could get a tour.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is amazing. First off, Pete, I just learned something huge. I am a long haul hero, and I'm doing something fucking holy here. Like, really holy. Like, I will tell you, I was raised Catholic, Cape Cod, but there's a whole thing going on in New York City. I've been here 2000, so 24 years. I committed to New York City. So not a Texan, I committed to New York. And I always say I'm not a city person, but I am a city person. I've lived in New York City for 24 years. But my whole family's Catholic, and like my niece, and I can't be her sponsor now because I didn't fulfill all my duties as a Catholic person. So I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm holy. I'm really holy. So I bought her a little cross. I'm like, I can't wear that anymore. I'm not really Catholic anymore because I don't practice, but I'm holy. This is amazing. No, seriously, it's amazing. It is awesome. That was such a great, thank you, Pete. That was such a great, and we are committed to the future of work. So we've been committed. I've been 25 years. Charlie started this company 30 years ago. We are committed to changing work so that you can be happy every day at work. And what does happiness mean? It means you're living, you're learning, you're engaged in your work. There's so much stuff I could talk about, but I was not going to do all of that. But just wanted to offer you guys a tour. Some people asked us if they could get a tour. We built this space in 2021. We looked for 5 years. We looked at 400 spaces. We were committed to finding the right place and not just moving. But we built like our dream office. So we'd love to share with you guys if you would like to get a tour. It's a partner home office. There's 6 of us in here on a daily. We believe that is closer to what the future of work will look like, as in smaller teams, kind of like a club. My God, are we like a little club. We cook together, we eat together. We have community and culture day in and day out. Sometimes we get annoyed with each other, like inside jokes and fights, but we mend through everything that we do here. So we'd love for you guys to get a quick tour. I think Laura is right here. Just stay on this in the seats if you're not going to leave. If you want the tour, maybe just sit here, and then Laura's going to take a group. And if there's more people, I think maybe Dana will give a tour, as if you or Kathy will give a tour. So, anyways, thank you, Tina. This was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to give a giant shout out to all of our volunteers. Without them, we literally could not host these events. Leah, Cici, Megan, Emily, Celestine, Ella, Alicia, Amanda, Christina, Angelica, Casey, Danielle, Deborah, Exa, Brian, Sky, Romaine, Meredith, Oriana, Maria, M, and Esmeraldas. Wow, thank you. And then thanks to Kevin, Matthew, and Rosario, you were able to watch the live stream. Live stream people, give it a shout out. If you need to live stream, hire these folks. They're amazing, they're reliable. And then thanks to Connie, you can watch the talk again. Thanks to Nelson, you can see how good you looked in this beautiful lit space. Hire these folks, they're so wonderful. And then, before I forget, I need to mention that there's still coffee and food. So run up quickly, grab it, and then out, okay? I want to make sure Kathy, she looks at me with big eyes like, oh, no, don't make them stay. Anyway, no, but there's some coffee and food left. And then, as always, I want to leave you with a quote. My mother always says to me that there's a reason that we have a choir. It's because sometimes you have to take a breath and the tune continues. So right now, I keep singing, but there might be a time where I can't, and I ask you to keep the tune going while I take a breath by Diana Butu. And reminder, look in the follow-up email, claim your link to watch the documentary. It's timed. I explained it. Read up. It's all going to be explained. It's just so wonderful that we were able to make this virtual screening happen. Thank you, Pete. I know what I'm doing tonight. And then next month, for those of you who have children, this is like a real moment. My children are here. They're now teenagers. But Adam Rubin was my son's hero because he created his all-time favorite. He created the stories of his all-time favorites picture books, like Those Down Squirrels, The Secret Pizza Party. There was another one, and he just came out with a new one. Adam Rubin is speaking on May 10th at the Old Tishman Auditorium. He's a wonderful, creative human. He will talk about storytelling. We hope to see you there. And thank you for being here, and thank you again, Next Jump, the whole team. This was wonderful. And for the volunteer team, can you help us break down the